Welcome to the Empower and Evolve podcast, a space where we will explore topics ranging from mindset to career to business, energetics, spirituality, cyclical living, and beyond. I am your host, Kat Tunnyberg. I am a mindset coach and integrative practitioner on a mission to help you take your life from meh to magical. Without further ado, let's plunge into today's episode.
Hello, everyone. This is not Kat. This is Ree. Ree is Kat's coach, and I have had the absolute honor in witnessing Kat over the past, I think, 4 or 5 years. It feels like a forever. It's probably less than that, but it feels like a lifetime. Her evolution has been absolutely freaking phenomenal, and I have thoroughly enjoyed coaching Kat over this time we've had together. And I have the absolute honor to interview her for her 50th podcast episode.
Oh
Hello,
my
Kat.
God. Hello. This is so fun. I love being introduced from my own podcast.
What's an honor? It's an honor. I'm so excited for today. I think this is really special, like just to acknowledge you and the milestone of 50 episodes. Like, not a lot of people, including myself, has made it to the 50 episode mark on their own podcast. Like, it's so good. Like, that just shows like your commitment to your podcast and how you've like seen it through and you've gone through all the waves of your life and your journey and your business and all the things that has now led you to this very moment. So I just want to take like a massive acknowledgement of you and all the listeners that have been here from the beginning, halfway through, the first time. Like, you're choosing yourself to invest in learning about your femininity and all the things Kat has to deliver. So I'm really excited for this episode.
I love that so much. And this is like a classical cat fashion where I'm like, it's not a big deal. It's just classical cat has no idea about like her own greatness. I was actually having a coffee with a friend this morning and I was like, she was like, oh, what you got going on for the rest of the day? I'm like, oh, I'm being interviewed for my own podcast. It's my 50th episode. And she was like, I thought you had a podcast with 50 episodes.
Exactly. Not a lot of people do this, sister. So it's so good. It's so good. So I have a couple of questions that I've got available for you, and then I'm going to allow it to just go wherever it goes because that is so you and I. And the very first question I have for you is what has been your favorite solo episode? So an episode where it's just been you riffing on a topic. What's been your personal favorite to record?
There's actually a couple now that I'm thinking about. The first one, that is a newer one, would probably be my surrender experiment, which I recorded earlier this year. I have to look up. Maybe I actually can quickly look it up whilst I chat. But my surrender experiment was really when at the start of this year, when I was going through a really tough time. I like to refer to it as my ego death moment from earlier this year. Oh, it's episode 32. And I really got real about what helped me through that time and how I allowed myself to surrender to the experience of going through the ego death. So that would be one of them. And then one
Mm.
of them is actually one of my old ones. And I haven't listened to it for so long. So I have no idea what I'm actually even saying in there. But someone recently mentioned it to me. Let me see, where is it? Episode 19. So that was back when the podcast was actually called the Connecting Back to You podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Episode 19, then downside to the women's liberation movement.
Oh, okay. What did you like about that one?
Because it was like the first time I feel like I publicly spoke about some of the downfalls that I've seen from the whole women's empowerment and we can do it all and I'm the same
Mm,
as a man and how that has led to demasculating men and
yeah.
all the freaking things of the imbalances that we now experience between the feminine and masculine. So those would probably
Mm,
be my two favorite
yep.
solo ones.
I love that. I've you said that you haven't listened to it in a while, so now I have to ask, how often do you listen to your own podcasts?
Not very often, but it has happened.
I just, I literally have this vision of you like, I've got nothing to listen to on my walk. I'm gonna listen to myself. And you're like trotting along, going like, yeah, this is great. Oh, I even needed this remembering.
Oh my God, that is so hilarious. No, it's only happened a couple times, and it actually has mainly happened with interviews with other people that I've
Yeah.
re-listened to them. And then there is one that I've re-listened to, I think a couple times, just because it's such a like touchy subject, and that is the whole coaching versus therapy one.
Mm-hmm.
Because someone, and I really loved it, someone who met me at the festival that I was speaking at and really loved me there, ended up binging my podcast. And she's she's a therapist, she's a counselor, and she got to that episode, and naturally it was a little bit triggering for her. But
Mm-hmm.
good for her, she reached out to me, sent me an email, and we had this beautiful discussion about this topic, and we're able to really meet each other and see each other. But after I had gotten that email from her, I was like, did I like really make it sound like this? So I went and re-listened to it, and I was like, no, I didn't. So then I like ran it through the perception as projection lens, etc., etc. Anyway, so that was one time when I listened to a solo episode back. And now that we're talking about the episode, I actually want to add something to the whole coaching versus therapy, because someone taught me this after I posted that episode. And I have often referred to it. I even shared it with this therapist, and she agreed, or she could see the kind of the difference. And that is, therapy gets you to baseline and
Mm.
coaching gets you above baseline.
Yeah.
And I really love that because they're both so important.
Mm-hmm.
Both absolutely incredibly important. And I just love the difference of, if you've had a lot of trauma and things, you need to get to baseline first before you can then start
Fully.
focusing on getting above.
Fully. I just had this idea. I think it would be really great if this particular person's open to it or somebody else that is a therapist where you can have an open discussion of how the world moving forward can support both industries to like transcend the collective because both industries are so totally needed. So I
Yes.
feel like that would be a really great wholesome conversation of like how as we as two polar opposites in a way come together to actually transcend the collective. What does that look like if we were to really be supporting the human rather than checking in with our industry being better? I think that'd be a really great episode.
Oh, I'm gonna pitch this to this chick. I feel
Yeah.
like she would be interested in, because she said she was so nervous to even reach out to me about it, but that we had such a great conversation, and she was like,
Yeah.
wow, I love you even more now. And like
Mm.
I really like applauded her as well for like good on you for getting uncomfortable and for speaking your truth. Like you're
Yeah.
totally allowed to disagree with me. Like I don't
Yeah, absolutely.
know.
Yeah, it's a whole different perspective of the world. So I love that.
Yeah. Oh, that
Um,
would be fun.
yeah, I'm excited for that one. Okay, so the next question is, what has been your favorite episode with a guest?
That's my most recent one that I actually posted this week, and that was with Lacey Nadelski. And the episode itself is Radical Body Acceptance. That's what the title is. And it would be episode 49.
Mhm.
And the main reason being it was just so juicy. So Lacey is a holistic pelvic care specialist. She is the only woman who has had her hands up my vulva, my vagina, and we get into like what that experience was like, and we get into orgasms and connecting to your pussy, etc. And it was just so good.
Yeah, love that. Yay. I'm excited to listen to that one. Um, what has surprised you about having a podcast? Like, what did you not expect would happen, or that, yeah, it just surprised you in the journey of creating a podcast where you're like, wow, like that was not something I expected. Could be negative, could be positive, could be both.
um, the positive, and this is just going back to the theme that I even mentioned earlier, that people actually want to listen.
Yeah.
They want to hear from me.
Yep.
Like that's been a really big surprise. And I've actually really loved it. Like I love getting messages, and even from like really old podcast episodes and people going back and listening to like one of the first ones and then messaging me about it and realizing things like that's just been such a beautiful surprise.
Mm.
And the negative one, it's not really negative, but it's like just the fact that you have to come up with things to talk about all the time. That's like
Yeah,
fairly challenging.
it is. Yes, I totally agree. And like, even if you're a little feeling a little bit introverted that day and you're like, I need someone to riff on, like, I don't know about you, and also you being a projector, but it feels so much easier when you're talking with someone. So sometimes just talking to yourself is like, blah, 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 blah. So I
Yeah.
totally get that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's definitely a piece. And this is something I've recently, or like maybe the last 3 or 4 months, have implemented, and I really love it. And I hope that I'm going to be able to continue doing it. Is that I'm rotating interview and solo episode
Yeah, cool.
because they're both very valuable.
Mm.
And I do love the interview piece because the riffing with someone else and having a conversation is just so fun.
And I also feel for you, particularly knowing how you work and knowing like your mission and everything like that, the listener will be able to hear things about you that they didn't know that you knew because the guest is bringing it out of you because it might not be something that you always speak about. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that you knew that, or you could riff into that, or you've experienced that because it's not something that's come up like on your own. So I think it's really beautiful that your audience gets to know you on a deeper level by having guests.
That's so very true. I've never even thought about it that way.
Mm, love that.
You've
What
been
have
a
you?
guest a couple times.
I sure have. And you've given great information even in our like our podcasts, you know, like you've riffed and shared like your stories
Mm.
that the viewer may have not known about you. Like, yeah, I knew about it. Actually, no, what was the one that there was a piece I remember? I think it was like where you live. I was like, I don't know where that is.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
think that was
remember
the
that.
one. It was like something around Estonia or
Yeah,
something.
that's it. I didn't realize you were a student.
Yeah, that I was
That
like,
was great.
what? uh
Look, it happens, okay? I'm still yet to learn everything about you. I'm sure there's things I don't know about you.
how do you not know everything about me through like on and off working together for 4 years? Like what?
There's there is many things that you may have not. I don't know where you lived when you were 1 year old or your first boyfriend.
There we
Just
go.
saying. There you go. That's just two things. I don't know what your favorite food is. What's your favorite food, Kat?
What is my favorite food? I don't even know. Like I love different foods. I love, it's just gonna sound so weird, but I love beef, just red meat. Love
Oh
it.
yeah.
Like
Yeah.
whether it's in a burger or as a steak or like, I
Mm,
don't know. Yeah. That's probably
mm,
one of my favorite foods. Red meat.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mm, good for you.
Yeah.
Well, some people think it's good for you. Uh, the next question I have is what have you learnt about yourself throughout creating the podcast?
Mm, what have I learned about myself? I have, it has shown me a lot about the ebb and flow of my energy. It's kind of like taught me even more about that, being a
Mm,
projector and a non-energy being. Like how at different times of my life, different things work for me. I've always been fairly consistent with the podcast. There was times when I did it bi-weekly, there was times when I did it weekly. There was times when I had to take a break because things just went bazookas and I had to focus on other things and just allowing myself to move through these different energetic patterns. That's something I've really learned through doing this podcast is,
I love this.
yeah, that's probably been one of the biggest things I've learned. And also surprising myself with how much I actually know.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when walking in the street going like, I said that. I'm so great.
Yeah, listening back to my own podcast episodes.
Look, I'll be honest, you are not the only person that does that. I have listened to some of mine before and I'm like, that was really clever. Gold
Yeah, it's good
star.
to like listen to them sometimes, hey? And like be like, oh yeah, I said that, hey?
Oh, here's a great question. Have you ever listened to one of your own podcasts and gone, oh my God, I can't believe I used to believe that?
Oh, 100%.
Are you willing to share what it was?
Oh my God. Like, even like thinking back to the whole coaching versus therapy one, because even if I think about that episode, there may still be an inclination where it seems to someone that I dislike therapy, which is not the
Mm,
case. But there's, yeah, like some of those nuances in there. Um,
mm,
and probably things around like business. I've probably talked into like having to do things a very masculine and structured way. And I definitely in the past used to have way more of that black and white mentality.
Yeah.
or it had to be this way or that way. And I'm sure that that has slipped into my podcasts many, many times, even like teaching about menstrual cycle stuff. And yeah.
But the cool thing about that is everyone is an evolution, and everyone has the right to change their mind at any time. And that shows your leadership. That shows your leadership as a coach, because you're willing. I would want to hope that some things that you used to believe, you no longer believe, because you've been so open-minded to go, wow, actually, I can see how that is a better possibility for me or possibility for my clients, that I get to believe that now
Yeah.
rather than what I used to believe. So that shows me how much of a great leader you are, because you're willing to go, actually, I can see how I was wrong in that moment and I get to choose this now.
Absolutely. And I mean, I've never claimed to know everything. So, I keep evolving, I keep growing, I keep learning new things. And I got, I don't like what I said in the past is probably not true anymore in the future. And it's just changing and evolving. And I feel like sometimes, and I've been this person myself, and I often catch my clients out on this as well, as we have had a negative experience with a person in the past. And then we just like tar them off for the rest of our lives, kind
Mm.
of thinking that they could never change. But that, like, if you have the belief that people don't change, like, how is that affecting you yourself? Because if people don't change, your people, you don't change.
Yeah.
And how is that
Really.
benefiting you in your journey of growth and evolution?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And also it's putting conditions on love,
Yeah. Oh, this
which
has
is,
been a big one with one of my recent clients we're talking about. It's
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Mm. Condition, like so many people say that they have unconditional love until they really look at the conditions they put on the relationships.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a big one. It's a
It,
big, juicy one.
oh man, we could riff on that.
You could. Well, for those that might be listening and feel like they have conditions on love, like what would be the first thing you'd recommend them to do?
Look for any time in their life where they felt love, but that condition wasn't being met.
Mm-hmm.
Find the proof that they can feel love without that condition being met.
Mm-hmm. That's a good
Which this
one.
is actually something interesting I had with one of my clients, where she was saying like, oh, I'm not feeling loved in my relationship with my partner, and they're not doing this and that. And like, and I asked her, like, have you ever had a partner who's done that? And have you ever felt loved? And the answer was like, yes and no. Like, I've never had any partner do these things, and yet I have felt loved at like
Mm,
different times, like has had breakups and stuff, but that doesn't mean that she's never like experienced feeling loved in a
mm,
relationship. And that was, I feel like, a bit of a aha moment, because sometimes we
mm,
make up these stories that, yeah, the only way that I can experience love is through this way. But think about all the ways in your life where you have experienced love where that condition wasn't actually met. So where
mm,
is this coming from? Like, who told you, or where was this the first time you experienced it, or who was modeling to you that in order to feel loved, this is what needs to be met? Like, where did the story start from?
mm. The biggie.
Yeah.
I've got a random one for you because I'm not even going to explain how my thought process went here, but I'm going to ask you because it's your realm. Smut books. You know what a smut book is, right?
I know what a smart book is. You'll be surprised, Ree. I've never read one.
That's okay. It's not about you reading them, but you get the idea of what a smut book
Yeah.
is, right? It's
Yeah.
basically porn, in my opinion. Like the
Yep.
ones that I have read, I'm like, holy crap. So here's my thought process for you. There is a generalized belief that men shouldn't be watching porn because it's addictive. Where is the line of smut books becoming addictive and disassociating from the expectation of reality of what a man can provide?
Ooh, I really like that. That's a goody good. Yeah. How the fuck did you get here?
I'll tell you later.
Yeah. No, I do. And this is, again, there's so many nuances, right? And this is like a conversation that you and me have so many times. There's so many nuances. Like, I do get the whole point of porn can destroy a way that man perceives woman.
Mhm.
And I also believe that there's a time and a place for porn, and that it can serve a purpose. I believe it's the same with smart books.
Fully.
And anything that you become obsessed with and becomes this like one thing can be deterring. And I
Mm,
believe that this is the biggest piece, in my opinion, with women, is they, whether it's books, like, I don't know, freaking podcast came to me, porn, whatever, wherever they create this picture of what love needs to be like and how a man needs to perform, if they have never experienced that in their own body and they haven't really been able to give themselves this form of pleasure, how can they expect it from outside of themselves?
mm.
So I'm a big advocate for women finding pleasure in their own bodies in whatever way feels necessary. And this can like literally be like the beautiful, gentle touches, like just running your hands down and just really noticing like the tingling sensations. And then doing the firmer touches and seeing what you feel like, what feels good for you, and knowing that different things are going to feel good at different times. But really coming home into your body and your pleasure and your experience before you can teach someone else. Because, and this is, I don't know if you know who Mama Gina is, but this is something she says. In order to give pleasure, you need to know pleasure.
Facts.
Yeah,
That's a good one.
it is a good one.
That's a good one. I like it. Yeah, I just found it really interesting. I had a thought process the other day, and I haven't really asked anyone out loud their thoughts that are kind of like, I guess it would be something that they would possibly help their clients through.
Mhm.
So I'm like, oh, I wonder if Kat has an opinion. And I agree. Like, I can see how they can be great, and I can see how they could really fuck up a relationship.
Yeah. I feel like it's
Um,
again the balance of knowing like what is a fantasy and what is
yeah.
the real thing. And this is actually something I encountered somewhere recently. Don't ask me where, because I consume so many things because I'm just obsessed with learning and like putting myself out there with knowledge. But some people may, and this is like, I'm just going to bring an example, and this is probably going to push some people, but some people may have the like fantasy that, they're somewhere and then this man just comes and takes them, and like, it might be a fantasy, right? And that like really turns them on when they think about it. Yet, if that was to happen in a real life situation, that would be rape,
Mm,
and you would probably not enjoy it. But in your fantasy, it turns
yeah.
you on.
Yeah. And then so then there's another layers. There's another layer where it is the if I'm actually finding that as a kink, how do I communicate that with consent through with my partner?
Yes.
So exploring it within boundaries and limits.
Yeah,
But
and the
it's still
boundaries
not
of your
it's still
partner
never
as
gonna be fully, it's still never gonna be the same as some random stranger just picking you off the street.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah, but
yeah,
what is like the safe way of experiencing this with your partner? How
fully.
what would that look like? Like,
And
the
why?
whole what
And
would
why? And
why?
why?
Yeah,
Like, why do you want to experience that? The intention of it. Mm.
so juicy. Like, if you think about the whole submission piece as well, which often plays out with this is like all my recent podcasts go down this route.
I'm here for it.
Let's just talk about sex.
We can.
um the whole piece of I find a lot of women who crave that submission piece in their sex life are women who have to be in their masculine a lot for whatever reason it might be, whether it's they run high corporate jobs, they run a business, they are the sole income provider for their family or whatever, and then all they actually want is to be submissive
Hmm.
because they never really have that experience of softening and allowing themselves to be in that role of submissive.
Hmm.
So it's just again like this would be a great reason why, right? Like if you start to dig deeper, like why do I want to be choked, to tied up, to all these things? Oh, it's because I never get to be in my feminine. I never get to be in my submissiveness in the receiving, and this is what I actually crave. Like this is filling a void that I don't experience in my life. It's fascinating.
It is very fascinating. And it's almost like they want to control the space of being uncontrolled.
Mm-hmm.
Like like they want to control the concept of losing control. That's probably a better
Mm-hmm.
way of saying it. But they
Yeah,
still have control.
yeah.
It's fascinating.
And
All
that can
right.
be a great way of learning to release control at first because
Mm-hmm.
it's in a safe, controlled manner. Because
Mm-hmm.
of the whole releasing control piece is such a big piece for women. This is something I coach so many of my clients through.
Mm. Mm. Yes, I could talk about that a lot too. Back on track. Um, how have you evolved since creating a podcast?
Feel like my podcast has been like if you were to go back and listen to all 50 episodes, like from the very beginning to now, like it's really a journey of evolution.
Mm,
Because if I go back, episode one of my podcast is what is human design? I don't even
mm,
give human design readings anymore.
mm,
Like that itself is such an evolution of me and who I am and the different modalities that I've moved through. Because, there was the human design, the menstrual cycle coaching, the NLP, the breathwork, hypno, blah, 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 all the freaking things. And you'll notice them at different times and they come back at different times. And this is something that you and me have recently spoken about, how different things come back in cycles at different times when it's ready for them to be like resurfaced again.
mhm. I
Yeah.
love this. It's beautiful. Um, I added another one without you knowing. How would you, as a business owner, how would you personally like to improve your podcast moving forward?
So first of all, I'm going to say something about the fact that, I didn't even let you know about this. I didn't know any of this. None of it. I have fully surrendered myself to this beautiful woman. Yesterday, when she asked me a couple of days ago, she was like, "Do you want me to ask a certain question?" I was like, "I trust you. Just do whatever you want." And like she told me literally before we hit record, I think I had 1 minute to think about some of the questions she asked me earlier. So this is
Impromptu.
impromptu, full impromptu.
And
What
I
would
I wrote I wrote these questions when I was making breakfast 2 hours ago. So, you
this is
know,
how we run.
yes. So yes, how would you like to improve the podcast?
I feel like the one piece that I really could improve on is doing a better job at promoting it.
Mm.
Because currently I do such a terrible job at it, and my VA has kind of called me out on it. Bless her. I literally only post about it once a week on my stories, being like, "Hey, new
Oh,
episode
wow.
dropped." Yeah, it's bad. Like I know it's bad, but there's just so much posting to do. And I really don't love social media that much.
Newsflash, guys, you can be a business owner and an online business owner and hate social media.
Yeah, it's so
Just
true.
saying.
If I wasn't running a business and if my mission wasn't freaking big enough, I would not be on social media. Like I have a few friends who are not on social media and I secretly want to be them.
Yeah, same. I feel that. I
Yeah.
feel that in my soul. I'm like, I would love to just be on a million acres in the middle of nowhere and no one knows that I exist sometimes. I'm like, it would just be plottering in my garden,
Yeah.
not knowing what the world's actually like,
Yeah.
being
Seriously, that would
completely
be a
delusional.
dream.
That would
But
be a dream.
I just had this idea that I could actually utilize my VA and because she cuts out like what I call an audiogram to
Hmm.
use for like promoting. I could get her to start cutting out more than one, so I have more than one clip to start promoting.
Hmm. I'm
Yeah.
sure there's many ways that I can teach you on a later time.
Um,
Um, and the final question that I have for you is if someone was to start their own podcast, what advice would you give them?
someone was to start their own podcast, what advice would I give for them? The first one might be a little bit counterintuitive, but this is what dropped in, so I'm going to trust it. And two of the things I'm going to say are going to be like completely like, how could you say these both things? The first thing is don't do it too early.
Mm, I like
Because I
it.
feel like sometimes we have these stories in our head that we have to do it all as a brand new business owner. Yet when you're brand new, I'd rather you focus on the money building activities, like actually building clientele, filling your programs, etc., being on social media, engaging with people, la 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 la, like networking, all those things, than spending time recording a podcast. Because
Mm,
if you're that early on in your business, you probably do not yet have the audience that is going to be listening to the podcast and consuming it.
I like that. That's a good one.
And then B, just do it.
So polar. And that, guys, is the definition of nuanced.
Just do it and let it be imperfect. Like
Yeah.
I still record these podcasts on freaking Zoom.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a fancy program and all these things. And like I have a mic, but when I first started recording, I didn't have this thing.
Mm.
And I've even like someone commented on my like as a review being like, oh, I've like binge listened to this whole podcast and I love it. The audio quality is inconsistent. Yeah, because when I first started, I didn't have all the equipment.
Hmm.
And I didn't have a VA who goes through and edits and equalizes. God knows what she does. Seriously, sometimes she tells me the things that she does on a podcast. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. You're speaking Chinese to me. Like, and I have no idea. Uh, so, like, yeah, complete polarity in those decisions. But
I love that.
that's the two pieces that I would have for someone thinking about launching a podcast because they're both equally possible.
Yeah. What I love about you is that you're very similar to me in the context of you're such a rebel of how you do business. And it's like such an honor for anyone to want to work with you because they're going to be getting a coach where it's like, if you want to go do it that way, let's make sure your beliefs believe that and let's run with it. Like you can do it however you want to. And I think that's been one of your biggest lessons is like you've realized you can do business in whatever way you want to do it. It doesn't have to fit into a perfect little box. It can be this way, that way. You can change it tomorrow. It doesn't really matter. And I love that you do that for your clients. So anyone that's listening that is from your audience that wants to, grow their business, but they don't want to do it by the rules, like you are such a blessing for them.
I
You
am
really are.
such an outlaw.
You are such an outlaw. Like I barely ever give you strategies. And normally if I give you strategies, I'm like, I know you're probably not gonna do this, but I'm gonna share it with you anyway, and you can just take your bits. Like I'm so like I know you and I know you enough to be like, I'm just gonna give you the advice you're after, fully knowing that you might not even take any of it. You could take 1% of it and ditch the rest, but it still works
Yeah.
because you've like fully believed that you can do business how you want to do it. And as soon as you actually, we could probably talk about that. It's like when you felt like you had your ego death, I know for you, you had a big realization like you were trying to do it in a way that you just didn't want to do it anymore. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't your way. You
Yeah.
just took it from somebody else. So
Yeah.
maybe if anyone out there is like in business and they're looking outside themselves
Mm-hmm.
for, the answer,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that a coach is so important. Like that again, that's like that sounds super polar opposite of try and do it by yourself and really tap into your innate nature. And also you need a coach.
Mm-hmm.
Like, how do you have that conversation with a client? I know we have those conversations, but I would love to know how you have those conversations with your clients.
Well, it's really about asking quality questions, right? Like, and just
Mm,
figuring out what is true for the client and what do they need at that particular time in their life.
yeah.
Knowing that that's going to change from one day to the next, and that how you did a launch even 2 months ago, even a month ago, may not work for you in the season that you're in now. And this is the beauty of business, is actually trying different things and seeing what sticks and
Mm,
what feels good and finding your way of doing it. And I do truly believe that business is 80% energetics, 20% strategy. Like we
mm,
need the strategy sometimes. Like we still need to be doing the thing, like post on social media, strategize, network, sell, like all these things. We need to have like certain things in place. And yet it's so much about your beliefs and you actually looking after yourself and putting yourself first, putting your desires first, putting your fun first, and figuring out like, how do you want to build your business?
mm,
Because you may have heard that you have to do it one way, and yet that's just so opposite to how you actually want to do it, but you think you have to do it that way because that's what you've been taught. And this is kind of like, again, the polarity piece comes in. I'm a big fan of modeling in the sense of, seeing someone who has achieved success and then like seeing kind of what they're doing and emanating that in some way so that you can be like, okay, like I've never done this, they're doing it, let me model them, like let me do what they're doing. And then at the same time, there's a fine line of modeling and then doing things out of alignment. So it's almost like finding this balance of, okay, this person is doing it, that is proof that this is possible, and if they can do it, I can do it, and these are some of the things that I can see them do it, but let me try and do this, and if it doesn't feel good, like let me change. So it's I find like modeling is more than like allowing it really to become a full modeling process. It's more like a trial and error and try it on and see if it fits process.
Yep. And also for me, modeling is about looking at the depth of their character and what is it about their character that I could bring onto myself, because you could layer a character into such a different action. So, for example, if they're like consistent as fuck with cold calling, you can be like, well, actually, I don't want to do the cold calling, but I love how consistent they are with their strategy. So, what is it in my strategy that I get to be consistent in?
Yes, I love that. And then I think the other piece that is often a bit neglected in like the whole modeling piece is does the person that you're trying to model, the like are they living the life that you want to live?
Mm.
And if they're not, why are you trying to build your business like they are?
Yep.
And I feel like this is especially true for us projectors that don't have the same energetic output. Like a lot of the people I look up to and really love and admire are generators or manifesting generators. And I'm
Same.
never going to work like them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't even want to.
Yeah. I know. Some of them, I'm just look at them and go, aren't you exhausted?
Do you need
Are
a
you
nap?
tired? Yeah. You need a holiday. Why haven't you had a holiday?
Yeah. But it's so easy, especially if they are having a lot of financial success, to
Mm,
get into the story of, oh, if they're doing it, I must do it that way. And I believe when
fully.
you're new in business, or maybe new in a new like facet of business or a new like pivot in your business, it's easy to fall into this trap more
Mm,
so than when you're already seasoned in business.
yeah,
Because when you're new in a new area, you don't really know what it looks like yet.
fully.
Yeah,
This has been so great.
it has. So fun.
I've loved interviewing you
Thank
for
you. I love
your own
being
podcast.
interviewed by you for my podcast.
So great. If anyone's looking for someone to interview them for their podcast, you can holler out. I'll gladly do it. I'll gladly be your interviewer.
It's fun to like I remember interviewing you for your podcast earlier this
Mm,
year. And that was fun. It's fun to do for someone else.
it is. It
Yeah.
is fun. You're like,
And it's
oh,
fun to
what?
be like in the reversed roles for your own podcast.
Yeah, it's so good.
Feels
Thank you for sharing all of the random things from podcasts to smut books to having your fingers being other person's fingers inside of you. Um, I love where we go.
this is why you need a coach, people, because so that you can go on like random rampages. And this is actually something else that I found really interesting because I was talking to this with my friend. Like the difference of like she asked me about my business today, and this is a friend who's currently learning to become a therapist, and she's doing her first client hours. And she asked me about like how I structure my client sessions. I was like, yeah, I have bi-weekly calls, and then they have me on Voxer and they can message me. And she was like, what? Like you allow people to reach out to you outside of your sessions? I'm like, yeah, like that's the
Mm.
freaking crucial part because so much
Mm-hmm.
can happen in the time in between our sessions.
Yep.
Like that's so important. And this is like the beauty of having a coach. It's not just someone that you have for like 60 minutes at a time. Depending on the coach, I'm sure there's probably coaches out there who only do sessions like that. But I know you and me both like love the support outside of the calls.
Yep.
And I know you have a couple clients and I have a couple clients who are purely on like Voxer on a messaging app. And the
Mm-hmm.
results they're getting are incredible.
Yep.
And yeah, there has to be boundaries around, like I don't always respond on the weekend. Sometimes if I feel like it, I will,
Hmm.
but it's not promised, and I do make that clear to my clients.
Yep.
Yeah, sometimes it takes like up to 24 hours during the week even to hear back, and
Mm.
such is life.
That was actually before I was even a coach. That was the one thing that I felt like was the biggest downfall of having a therapist.
Mm.
Like when I used to see a psychologist for my own
Mm-hmm.
trauma, I remember so much happening between like the times of the sessions that when I got to the session, I'm like, I feel like things happened and I can't remember them.
Yeah.
And I love like as a coach, when things are happening, you can go, oh, I can see how the patterns we discuss on our calls are playing out right in front of you. So then you've got it in real life time of what patterns are actually showing up rather than it being like relayed at the call
Yeah,
when they're no longer like in the reactive state.
exactly.
So imagine if therapists figured out a way that they could do that.
Yeah. But I feel like that's at least what she said as well. She was like, I would never want to do that.
Yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah.
But then also, I guess there's like they could be dealing with like deep fucking trauma
Oh,
and like imagine getting a Voxer like voice note of someone like trying to run away from their husband because they're in a domestic violent thing. Like that would be terrifying. So yeah, I can see why they don't do it, but it would have yeah, it's tricky.
yeah.
Like fuck, therapists, coaches deal with a lot of things, but therapists will see sides of the
Yeah.
world that like not a lot of people see.
Yeah.
Same with like the police force and like any
Yeah.
first responders, like fucking hell.
Yeah. Hats off to
What?
them. Like, and that, that's kind of, and that's why I really love that example of like they get them to baseline versus above baseline, because
Yeah,
that boxer wouldn't work if like someone's just trying to freaking get to baseline.
to survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
fully. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally. This has been great, my love.
Thank you.
I'm excited to interview you on your 100th episode.
Yes, me too. I guess that will be in like a year and a bit if I continue weekly, but who knows? My energy might change. I might go back to
Exactly.
bi-weekly. I might take a break.
Who
Who
knows?
knows?
Who knows? But I'll be there.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And thanks everyone for listening. Hit us up with what you've learned.
Yes.
Thank you for tuning into the Empower and Evolve podcast. It means so much to me that you've taken time out of your day to tune in. If you're open to it, and if you love the episode, I would love to invite you to take a couple of minutes to rate and review the podcast on either Apple Podcasts or Spotify. This will help me reach new audiences and share this message more broadly. And if this episode really struck a chord with you, I would like to invite you to share it on social media and tag me at It's Coach Kat so we can spread the love together. Until next time, I'll catch you there. Bye.